Hi everyone, Jane from Pandemonium Art Gallery here, and today we're doing something a little bit different. Today we are painting in my kitchen. My schedule got a little crazy this week, so I wasn't able to paint at the gallery like I usually do. So you get my lovely pink wall behind us today instead of the red. Today we're going to be painting a little bit of a different Valentine's Day painting. It's a little darker. Somebody told me they thought it was sad. To me, it feels very happy. I don't think it's a sad painting at all. So this painting may look kind of intimidating, but I promise you this is one of the easiest paintings that I have posted on my channel. So don't go into it feeling intimidated, just get your materials and let's get started. For today's painting, we are going to use the following colors: Dioxazine Purple, Phthalo Blue, Titanium White, Yellow Oxide, but some companies call it Yellow Ochre, so either one is gonna work. Mars Black, and Cadmium Red Deep Hue. This is also a Liquitex Basics paint. I just bought it in a large jar and I didn't want it to dry out too soon, so I just put it into this bottle. I'm painting on a 12 by 16 inch stretched canvas. This is a brand new canvas. I haven't painted over it, I haven't done anything to it. The brushes we'll be using are a 1-inch flat brush, about a 5/8 inch angle brush, a 1/2 inch angle brush, and if you only have one angle brush, either one of them will do, and a small round brush. And you really could use any kind of a brush, a flat brush, an angle brush, a filbert, but this is what I'm gonna use. So for this background, we're actually gonna paint it twice. And the first time we paint it, we're gonna use Dioxazine Purple and Phthalo Blue. And notice I have a lot of Dioxazine Purple here. I'm gonna apply the first layer of color very thick. And the reason I'm gonna do that is because I'm gonna paint wet on wet. So I'm actually not gonna really let this painting dry at all in between layers. And that's how we get kind of that mottled effect that you saw in the original painting with the purple and the yellow kind of intermixed. So that's why I'm using so much paint here. Normally I would use maybe this much to paint an entire background, but I'm actually gonna use both of these. So I've got my flat brush, wet it off in the jar and wipe it on the edge. And I'm gonna load up with lots and lots of purple paint. Don't spread it too thin. Let it be really thick on there. And it can be thicker in some parts than others. You just wanna get a nice coverage. Now I want some of my flowers to, sorry, my easel was having none of it today. So what I was saying was I want some of my flowers to appear blue. So I'm gonna leave some spots blank with the purple and I'm gonna go back and add blue into them in a minute. So kind of be thinking about where you might want your flowers to be. It doesn't have to be real exact, you can still just kind of go with it. But I might want a blue flower right there, so I'm gonna leave that part blank for now. And notice some of the paint I'm putting on is thicker than others. I'm just getting it on there and covering all of the white. Let's get a little blue. I'm not worried about blending them in. I'm gonna paint over all of it, so there's no need to worry about blending those colors in or making this background look any way in particular. Just cover it. So my poor easel is probably not long for this world. My top portion here is breaking. So if my canvas escapes while I'm painting today, it's not because I'm being mean to it, it's just because my easel's broken. I apparently was mean to my easel. I'm just gonna go through a couple of these spots that are a little bit thinner in paint and just thicken it up a little. I think that's good. Now I'm gonna take my round brush, and this is honestly probably gonna be the hardest part of the painting for some of you. And that's gonna be drawing the heart. Now, what I recommend you do is, if you're not confident in drawing a heart, just go online and look for anatomical heart drawings and just be really simple with it. Some of you on Facebook said that you didn't really like the heart. It was a little creepy. If you don't want to do a heart, you can draw a vase. You'll do it in the same way that I'm doing. Or you could even just leave it blank and just let the stems of the flowers be hanging down. So my little round brush is wet off in my jar and then just wiped a little bit. This paint is still very wet. I'm just going to come over here and get some white. Now to draw a heart, I'm going to start up here, kind of come down almost like a Valentine heart shape, and then up here the same type of shape but a little lower. So let me show you. I'm going to start here, come down. About like that. And it doesn't have to be real exact. If you have to sketch around, that's fine, because again, you're going to paint over this purple and blue. Now we're just going to add some of the little artery ends and ventricles and whatever. So I'm going to draw a little line there and bring it down to about there. And then I'm going to draw another line from here that comes up and ends there. About like that. And really I'm just kind of giving myself an idea of where these are. This is also all going to be painted over. Some little vein ends there. Come down like that. Up through here. Some more little vein ends. This is kind of difficult for me to do because I like to put my hand on the canvas when I paint, especially when I'm trying to do details. And you can't really do that here because all the paint's wet. You'll get paint all over your hands. And there's like a little wiggly spot over here. Okay, so there's our heart. Let's draw our flowers. Just kind of wipe that off of my paper towel so I can get a little bit more of a pure white. Now our brush stroke for our flowers is very simple. Just start at the center of the flower, press the brush flat, and kind of twist it a little as you go out to the edge. And that's it. And see how that creates a blue flower. And I'm just going to add those all over. Just kind of scatter them all over. And if you don't use a round brush like what I'm using, that's okay. You'll just get different shapes to your flowers, which is not a bad thing. I'm going to put another one right here and let it kind of overlap this flower a bit. And let's do like a little flower bud over here. So I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to put these petals a little closer together. I'm only going to do 3 or 4. Drip a little one off the edge. And we can make a flower that's kind of facing up. So to do that, I'm just going to do half of the flower. And then we can even make one over here that's facing down. See, this is about as simple as you can get with a flower. Let's do another one up here that's kind of facing upward. Maybe he's overlapping this one a little bit. And then I think I want to add Just like a little bud that kind of fell off down here. Now we're gonna add some stems, and I'm gonna use my 1/2" angle brush. Just wet it. And I'm gonna get some black. Now these stems, let them be really free. Don't try and make just straight lines. Don't try and, you know, cut around the flowers. They don't have to be real exact. You're not gonna see a lot of this line. And notice I'm holding my brush farther back. I normally tell you guys to hold right down here to get a lot of control, but I am gonna hold farther back because it's gonna let my lines be a little bit wobblier. So I'm gonna start at the base of a flower and just drag it down to right where this little line is. And you can kind of wiggle your brush as you go to get some interesting angles in your stems. But really, if there's something you don't like about the stems that you're making here, when we paint the background, you can always paint over it and then just paint the black line back in. I don't want to do that because I like the look that I get when I paint around something. And these stems don't have to be real exact as far as, you know, what flower they're attached to, because it's going to be really busy and kind of jumbled. So you wouldn't be able to tell really anyway. Just get an idea in there. And then I'm going to get just a little bit of a stem to this guy. So now here's where you can stop and make a decision. My background, the purple and blue, is still very, very wet. If I want a lot of that to come in with the yellow and white that I put over top of it, I can start painting the yellow and white now. If you don't want so much of it, or you don't want any of it, then let it dry completely. So on this one, I had some areas that were still quite wet. And see how it dragged that into it. But some areas where it was quite dry. Around here, more wet here. So I think I am gonna let this dry for just a few minutes, because as wet as this is, it's gonna bring in a lot more purple and blue than what I had in the painting I just showed you. And I just want some, not a ton. So I'm gonna let that dry for maybe 5-10 minutes tops. Okay, so I let that dry for about 10 minutes, and some of it is dry and some of it is still pretty wet. So I'm going to take my 5/8" angle brush, I'm going to wet it in my jar and wipe it on the edge. And now what I'm going to do is paint over all of the background, and I'm going to use the tip of the angle brush to get into some of these little crevices. Don't worry about blending colors, just like we did the background, but I'm also not worried about completely covering the background. So if I get little spots where the yellow and white didn't cover and the purple and blue shows, I'm just gonna leave that. I'm gonna grab some pure white and some yellow and just start filling it in. Kind of random brush strokes. And then I'm gonna cut around the edge of the flowers and then just break up that line. Try not to paint over your stems, but if you accidentally do, you can add it back in. You can use any colors that you want for this. Just make sure that you know what the colors are going to do if they mix together beforehand. I would hate for you to end up with a muddy mess. I know that I like the way the yellow mixes with the diox, so I knew that that was a safe bet for me because I use those two colors together a lot. I think that something like this looks best with contrasting colors, but you could also do it with like maybe red in the background and black and white over top. experiment with it and see what you like the best. And I'm not trying to get right up to the edge of everything. So really I'm just kind of filling in these spaces and letting a little of the purple and blue show around the edges of things. If while you were drawing your flowers, if you got a little piece of a petal that got away from you, it was a little longer than you wanted, then you can cover it up here. You can totally paint over it. In some of these smaller areas, if your brush is too big to get in there, just grab a smaller brush. And you can even just use the end of the brush to kind of just tap in, you know, a little hint of that color here and there. Okay, I think I got everything covered. I did accidentally paint over a little bit of my stems in places, but that's fine. I'll just touch that up in a little while. Now, the next thing we want to do is draw our veins on our heart. So I've got my round brush again. I'm just going to grab a little bit of black. Veins, arteries, I don't know which one they are. But this first one is going to come from this line here. And I'm going to bring it down and just kind of, almost like tree branches, just kind of taper it off, have a few branching off of it. Obviously, if you just wanted to do a vase, you could skip this part. I know you probably can't see those right now, but we're going to do the same thing in here as we did out here, except this is pretty much dry. But I'm going to paint around the veins. And we'll have another one come from right here, kind of that way. So those are pretty simple looking veins. I didn't put a lot of attention into it. So let's start filling in our heart. I'm going to use the round brush for all of this. And I'm going to mix just a tiny bit of black with some blue. Get a nice dark blue. And I'm going to add the tiniest, can you see how little white that is? The tiniest little speck of white, just so it doesn't look completely black. And I'm going to kind of go around the outer edge of the main part of the heart. I'm not worried about these little pieces here or this part, but I am going to do this, the main body, and then a little bit up in here. So I'm not worrying about blending. I'm just kind of dashing it on. And I'm not going all the way up to the edge of the yellow-white mixture, just to the edge of the line that I drew at first. And if it doesn't cover all of the blue purple on the background, I'm okay with that. Got a little too much white there. And can you see how I'm just like dashing it on? And be careful not to paint over my veins. And then the same thing back here with the stems. You can just kind of touch it into any areas where there's a break where you can see that part of the heart. I'm going to add a little bit more white into there and dash over where I started. And notice there's a break between those two colors. So you can either just kind of lightly tap at it with the tip of your brush, or you can wipe at it a little bit with your finger. Keep a paper towel handy if you're going to use your finger, just so you have somewhere to wipe it off so you don't accidentally touch something and move a color of paint into something you don't want it. This is a really carefree way to paint. You know, I'm painting around the veins, but I'm not trying to edge right in next to them. And if I accidentally paint over it, I'm not worrying about that. So don't put too much pressure on yourself here. You don't have to go for a perfect blend. You're just giving the idea that something is there. And we're gonna outline this whole heart with black. So if the edges are weird, you can see the white still, that's okay. We'll just paint it over with some black in a little bit. Now I'm gonna go a little bit lighter, and I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna go around the edge of that color I just laid down, just kind of dashing at it. And if you like the dashes and you don't want to blend them in, don't blend them in. Actually kind of like the way that color dashed over top of the last color, so I'm not going to worry about blending it in. Maybe a little bit right there. If you're painting a vase instead of a heart, just think about the shape of the vase and where the light might be hitting it. You can do the highlights in the exact same way I'm doing. Just be conscious of where you're putting them and how that light might be hitting it. Let's see, I think I'm going to put a little bit of a shadow in here because it goes underneath this part of the heart and comes out over there. So I'm going to make that a little darker. See, I'm just using the very tip of the brush right here to kind of fade it and blend it in. And some more white. And the same thing again. Oh, let's go a little bit lighter. There we go. I've still even got some spots where you can see the purple through the color, and I'm just gonna leave that because I think that fits in nicely with the background. I'm gonna take about a medium blue and fill in this little guy here. And make it a little lighter for the top. You could even go super simple on this if you want and just do kind of a traditional looking Valentine's heart. Throw in this guy here with some. It really doesn't matter what you paint to put the flowers coming out of. It just matters that you have a consistent look from each element. So that's why I'm not worried about really how this looks, because I didn't really worry about how the rest of it looked. Let's put a little highlight here. And I think I'm going to increase my highlight in my heart. Just kind of making little dashes with this super light blue right around the edge of this main vein. If you're going to use your hand, your finger to wipe the paint in, like I'm doing here, just be careful that you don't end up with blue paint up your nose. I believe it's quite possible that at this very moment I have blue paint looking like it's part of my nose. Okay, I cleaned off my brush, and now we're going to do the same thing in these last two areas, but in a real heart, these are different color than the rest of the heart. I think, I'm no doctor, but I'm pretty sure these are blue in a real heart. So we're going to do them more purple, but we're going to do it the exact same way. So I'm going to take, I've got just a tiny hint of purple left here. I'm going to grab some black and bring it over here and mix it in with my purple. I'm going to grab a tiny hint of white, just so it's not too terribly dark. And I'm going to start by shading these lower areas in the same way with just the little dashes. And a little bit lighter. I think I'm going to bring that dark part up a little higher right in here. And then we're going to add a little dark part here because it's kind of open. And then I think I'm just going to add a couple of highlights, and we'll outline the whole heart in black, and we're almost done. Okay, clean brush, just black, and now I'm gonna outline. If your canvas is dry at this point, you can put your hand on it to get a little bit of a steadier outline. If your outline is wonky, then it just fits in with your stems. No need to worry. And some of my outline is a little heavier than others. It's more narrower in spots. Now we're going to add some little leaves, and I want these leaves to be really long and really jaggedy shaped. You could have done this when you were doing the stems, but for me, I felt like I was already painting around enough things, so I decided to just do it at the end. And while I'm here, I'm just going to touch up a couple of these little spots where I painted over my stems a bit. I think that's really it. Okay, so I'm going to use the same brush. I'm going to get some black paint. And the brush stroke is going to be really similar to how we did the flowers. I'm just going to extend it longer. And don't worry about where it looks like it's connecting or isn't connecting. There's so much going on here with between the colors that are blending, the stems, the flowers. It's really scattered looking. So if you get confused about where a leaf starts and ends, then your viewer isn't going to be able to tell either. And if somebody is looking at it and they say, you know, oh, your stem, your flower or your leaf doesn't go all the way to here, then they're looking at it too hard. So don't worry about that. Just kind of decide on a place, and I'm going to press my brush flat, and I'm kind of twisting it as I go. I'm going to just stop right at that petal. I'm going to start back on the other side, kind of flat, twisting it, and let it just kind of disappear. It doesn't have to be fully filled in. Just get a bunch of really interesting shapes on there. Wherever you feel like you might have some blank space that you want to add a little something extra. I'm even going to bring one from here, kind of down. Let's see, one more, so we don't have an even number of them. Maybe right in here. And I'm gonna not clean off my brush, but I'm gonna grab a hint of white and a little yellow, and I'm just gonna add some slashes of highlight into a few spots on each one of the leaves. I'm not covering the whole thing. And I know right now that makes the leaf kind of hard to see, almost draws it into the background. But don't worry about that right now. It's gonna work out. So just do that kind of quickly. And now I'm going to go back to my black. And I didn't clean off my brush again. Now just kind of smooth over. And it'll drag that in and blend it. But leave a little bit of it too. That way it's just not dead black. But we're still going to add one more element to these leaves that's going to help them pop. I'm going to grab a little black, mix it in with my purple. And I've still got a little white there, so it's mixing it to be just a little bit lighter. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add centers to my flowers. Now, not all of them are going to have centers, so the ones that are little buds aren't going to have centers. The ones that are facing away, like this is facing up, up, out, they're not going to have centers. Just these ones. Now, to do the center, I'm going to decide which direction I think the flower is facing. And this flower here, where these petals are a little bit shorter and they're a little longer on this side, that kind of makes it look to me like the flower is facing a little bit up and this way. So I'm going to draw a line about like that, and then I'm just going to kind of scribble on the top of it. So that almost tells my eye that the center of the flower is pointed that direction. So I'm going to zoom in on this flower and show you. So this one to me looks like it's facing down and to the right. So I'm going to draw a little line and scribble a little bit just right there. It's just a really random shape. So I'm going to add those centers to any of them that I think needs one. And then I'm going to get just black. And I'm going to do it again, but I'm not going to cover up all of this color that I just put in there. Just kind of some little dashes of black. Okay, last part. I'm using the little round brush again, and now I'm going to use some of this Cadmium Red Deep Hue. I'm just kind of dipping into it, and I'm going to put some little dots in the center of these flowers. And that little bit of brightness is going to help make everything pop a little bit more and give little spots for your eye to jump around and rest on. I really like using this contrast to give a little bit of extra interest. That, and since we used the same colors so much all over, it just helps keep it from being a little boring. So I'm just going to kind of slash some here and there over these leaves. Just little dashes. I'm not outlining the whole thing. Just mostly like around the bends or wherever there's a spot I might want to cover up. And the red is going to look much more intense while it's wet. Once it dries, it's going to darken and become a little bit transparent, so the colors behind it will glow through a bit. So if the red seems too bright to you at first, just let it dry. And then if you don't like it, just paint it over with black and do it again or try something else. One more. And we're done. And there you just painted your very own expressionist, Van Gogh-ish style blue Valentine heart. If you had a good time painting this with me and you haven't yet subscribed, please make sure that you do so that you can always be notified when I put out a new video. I try and put out a video every single Wednesday, so make sure you come back then. Again, always feel free to share your paintings with me on my Facebook page. There's a link to that in the description below, as well as a full list of materials and a link to where you can find the music that I use in the background. So thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.